Welcome to the No More Meds podcast with Dr. Corinne Weaver. Are you stressed out because you keep getting sick and don't know what steps to take? Are you sick of not getting answers from your doctor and always needing to take drugs? How would your life be different if you were healthy? Be inspired and stay tuned for some practical solutions for healthy living.
Thank you, and welcome to the No More Meds podcast. I am so excited to share. This is going to be a special jewel that I have with us today. It's Dr. Gluzman, and she uses holistic and functional and integrative approaches to medicine. And this approach is one that focuses on the root cause of soft signs and dis-ease in children, which can almost always be traced back to gut health and nutrition. In her experience, focusing on a whole body approach allows for the reversal of a wide range of symptoms and the elimination of long-term conditions. When treatment starts with the microbiome, which I'm really interested about learning about this microbiome, you begin to see how many functions and systems of this body are heavily affected by what we eat. As the age-old saying goes, you are what you eat. Dr. Mom, as her patients have fondly nicknamed her, is dedicated to helping each child live happier, healthier, and more fulfilling lives, free from the disease caused by the imbalanced gut. Through her work and with the sickest children in the hospitals of New York City, as well as running her own practice, Dr. Gluzman has spent a decade passionately dedicated to helping thousands of families rescue and nurture their children's health. She forms a strong partnership with each family as she treats and creates a customized path to healing for each family as a whole. Her work to repair and heal the microbiome is achieved through individual treatment plans as well as masterclass offering. When it comes to her treatment, all the factors that influence health, wellness, and disease are taken into consideration, including the body, mind, spirit, and community. This allows the whole body healing and prevention of future disease and illness. Now, she's very educated and obviously has many certifications. She's been practicing a pediatrician in New York for over a decade, and she's received her medical degree from New York College of Osteopath Medicine, completed her pediatric residence at Jersey Shore Universal Medical Center in New Jersey, and is a board-certified fellow of American Osteopath Board of Pediatrics. Her clinical experience includes working in pediatric emergency and intensive care medicine, and inpatient and outpatient pediatric medicine, and neonatal intensive care medicine, newborn and delivery room medicine, and conventional holistic and integrative pediatric private practice. She also is a sole New York City pediatrician to be certified practitioner of the GAPS, which is the Gut and Psychology Syndrome Protocol. In addition to her pediatric practice, Dr. Gluzman serves as a clinical preceptor to New York medical facilities, where she provides education, guidance, and hands-on learning experiences for medical students and residence physicians. She also is a medical consultant for Google search and a guest speaker for NBC and BuzzFeed, and founded the Bright Illusion Thinking, where she composed evidence-based medical research content for fellow physicians. On a more personal note, her daughter, whose health she personally rescued and transformed, is the absolute shining star of her life. Thank you so much for coming to the No More Meds podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's so exciting because we speak the same language.
I know. It's so exciting to speak with other doctors that know the cause of the condition and not just, with the No More Meds thing. I was raised where, if we had a symptom, we look to our medicine cabinet and we take a pill. And I'm sure, now, were you raised that way, or were raised a little bit different?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it was a little bit of both. And some of the traditional wisdom that was like being passed down to me from my parents and my grandparents, I used to laugh it off when I was in med school. Like, oh, and even as a resident, even as a practicing pediatrician, I would say, oh, this is not evidence-based. But it turns out that they were right in so many ways. And every day I discover how I had such a limited view of how things work, and the difference between disease prevention and the study of what is health and wellness versus symptom management. It's just two different worlds. And I only understood one world when I went to become a pediatrician, and I was taught all this life-saving medicine. And then there's the whole other world of what our grandmothers knew and what traditional cultures knew, and that's that we are what we eat, and there's so much beyond, just symptom management that we need to think
Right. Did your parents and grandparents do like a lot of fermented foods, like
about.
bone broth, something like that?
So I really, yes, it was part of our daily, every single normal. Where I'm from Ukraine, and that's where I was born. And so fermented foods like sauerkraut, traditionally sauerkraut, and bone broth and chicken stock and chicken soup, and fermenting things and having like gelatin from animal, from animal bones.
Bones, right?
All that is like a regular, normal part of everyday life. And only when I went to figure out what is going on with my daughter and why I can't keep her healthy did I realize that this is all for gut healing, that this is not just random and delicious. But and so I thought it was pretty funny that I ended up specializing in gut health, and most of the scripts that I write are for exactly what my grandparents have been doing for centuries. So
Right. And it's funny because Western medicine, we've kind of gotten away from, and I don't know how many hours they actually teach in nutrition. Do you know, if you go to how many hours, 2 hours?
flowers in 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years of school, you get 2 hours of nutrition. And, that's so frustrating because it does start, like you said, food can be medicine if we use it properly. And so Western medicine, I was born, I'm kind of going to tell my age now, but I was kind of born in the 80s. And, the 80s, we didn't realize no food was the problem, right? We had bread 40, we could take bread and squish it and eat it, and all this thing. And that's one of the reasons why I was so sick all the time. But I had no idea. My parents had no idea that gluten or things that are inflammatory foods until now. I think a lot of the research, and there's more doctors like me and you that are coming about because there is evidence-based, right? And there's evidence-based nutrition now that we realize food can cause inflammation and cause dis-ease. I like how you said dis-ease. Explain to me that word because I know that you separated it. Is there a reason why you separated dis-ease? I want to hear this.
Well, yes, it is disease, one word, but the reason why it's separate is because I see a lot of soft signs that look just like an uneasy child, not in terms of behavior wise, but they are just uncomfortable, and those are soft signs usually. And this is all the small things that might indicate that there's a larger problem looming. For example, does your kid have eczema or seasonal allergies or food allergies? And maybe your allergist or your dermatologist or your regular pediatrician told you that no big deal, your kid will just outgrow it. Or every time your child eats, do their cheeks and ears turn red? Or are they always complaining of belly pain, but it's not so severe that they're hospitalized? And when they go to their regular physicals, they're fine, but there's constantly a problem that's affecting their everyday life. And this problem might not be a diagnosis per se, but it's causing discomfort or uneasiness for them. And well, obviously for you as parents as well. And so those are all soft signs. And I wanted to kind of point my finger at it a little bit because this is not something that's typically diagnosed as a problem in conventional medicine. So a lot of these soft signs indicating possibly a bigger problem, a bigger underlying inflammatory problem. Perhaps it's a dysbiosis problem, or not having the right diversity of the right microbiome. Maybe the endothelial lining, which is the cells that line the gut, maybe they don't have the right integrity. And so you start seeing all these different soft signs, and that uneasiness that kids sometimes experience, whether that be affecting their learning or communication or digestion, or are they burping all the time? Is it a problem with sleep? All of those point to soft signs that could indicate a larger problem possibly ahead.
So do you look for when you're looking for those soft signs, does that indicate you kind of doing some more testing like with the stool or looking at their microbiome?
I use soft science to help parents really take a look at their kid in a way that is, it's not just, you don't have to have, for example, wheezing all the time and then be diagnosed with asthma. There are certain steps that come before it. And those steps are a lot easier to reverse and heal than having a full blown illness when the basin, let's say like a child is like a basin, and you
Mhm.
have all this toxicity coming in and you need to empty this basin out. And if there's too much overflowing that basin, you're not able to empty it. And there's too much coming in terms of like inflammation and junk food and maybe environmental toxins. And then that's when you have symptoms. And those symptoms are starting to manifest more and more like eczema, asthma, and allergies. There's an epidemic of these chronic childhood illnesses now. But there are so many things that happen before it that are not necessarily spoken about that I kind of want parents to know about. So if they're feeling like something is off, something needs to be fixed, I feel like my kid is a bit too pale, or maybe it's not okay that they're having seasonal allergies. Yes, I know everyone else is having seasonal allergies, but that's actually an indicator of an underlying chronic problem. And so I have a questionnaire that I take parents through, and I go like, each symptom of these soft signs is like 1 point. And we do this in the beginning of my programs and protocols, and then we do in the middle, and then we do it in a few months.
Mhm.
And when you're healing the root cause of a lot of overt illnesses like eczema, asthma, allergies, chronic constipation, you're also going to be healing a lot of these soft signs, and that helps parents gauge how much better everything else is. So it's kind of like a indicator and a check-in.
Yeah, and it's also like being proactive too, right? So it's not waiting. Like as a parent, I feel like that we kind of know something's not right. But then, we don't want to take them to the doctor and we don't know what quite to do with it. We just kind of move on until it gets to be like, oh my gosh, too bad. So it's good that we're talking about this today to look at those soft signs that you're talking about because, there's children that come to my office and I know yours too, where they'll be fine. And then all of a sudden, they just all of a sudden start complaining of stomach pain. Don't know why, but then the mom would be like, now we have stomach pain. Now we're having headaches. Now we're having like a rash, and then like one symptom leads to another. And so, when you're doing these online programs, are you starting with those foundations, like with the bone broth? Are you teaching people how to do it? Are you advise getting people to go get it themselves? Or what are the kind of educational things that you're showing on your courses?
So I work one-on-one with families, but yeah, there's such a huge need for this information. The world of like holistic preventative medicine is quite overwhelming. Even I get overwhelmed because there's so many options. Like, how do you know where to start? You could sit there and read blogs and learn everything, but you kind of need someone sometimes to just tell you exactly what to do. And as a really busy mom myself, an entrepreneur, and I work and I have a kid and I'm getting a puppy soon. And so, so for busy parents, I feel like we just need something concrete that is empowering, that takes away all the guesswork, that is supportive. And so something like this is not always available in all the parts of the country. Like even in New York, I had a really hard time in New York City, where we supposedly have all the resources that we could possibly imagine having. I had a really hard time when I started on this journey when my kid was sick and I was a pediatrician. I could not find anyone to help me for months. It was
Wow.
really hard to find. It was really easy for adult medicine, but for pediatrics, super hard. And since kids are not little adults, I was looking for a pediatrician that understands this, and it was hard to find. So I started teaching national and international families that these protocols. But really, we start with the same. It's a 4-week program, and it's only as good as what you're able to do. So
Exactly.
I sit there and go, you have to make your own bone broth every day. You have to go butcher your own chickens, and you have to go ferment everything. That's super hard. So,
Right, right.
like, if a family is able to do it, then they do it. But it's not absolutely necessary to do all these things. I'm not a purist. There's a whole gray area of healing that can happen. You do what you can. There's no stress. You just look forward. So the approach is basically remove the things that are not serving your child, both in the environment, and help them get rid of the things that are not serving them inside their body. And so that could mean things like detox baths, which are usually pretty easy to do because a lot of kids are already bathing. So that
Mhm.
cuts out time. Making sure that they're pooping well, making sure that they're not exposed to a bunch of toxins in the environment that we can control. So that means no more, for a short time, I usually eliminate gluten and dairy and sugars for some time so that the body can decrease its inflammation naturally. Then we repair a lot of the damage that was done to the nutritional status of the body. So that could mean a lots of juicing in the second week to restore the nutrients and to replace all the nutrients lost in a growing child. Then we repair the gut lining by using stocks and broths. You said it. I mean, this is exactly, these are the same ingredients that our guts are made of. We need the ingredients to put into our kids' bodies that our bodies are made out of, and those are the collagens and the fats that are necessary to literally heal a very rapidly dividing endothelial lining. And then we restore the microbiome, and rebalance that to make sure it's diverse and helping us do all of our bodily functions,
Right.
for the immune system, for making sure that we could digest everything. So all of this seems like a lot, but when you do it week by week, you have all the information in front of you. You're able to do it, and I think so much healing happens in those 4 weeks that most people don't need anything else. Like most of the time, you see such a huge result and difference that you don't need to do any other testing or start any other supplements. That if you do this the right way, and this is like the most natural, holistic way, really very often don't need anything else for a child.
Yeah, those Epsom salt baths can be so powerful. I mean, even for myself, a lot of times I tell patients to do it, and then I'm like, oh, I'm going to take time to do it, and then I forget. And so have you ever been in one of those salt baths before where you're like in a pod?
Yeah.
So, oh, yeah,
Oh,
you've done that?
yeah, I have.
Yeah. So I did that this past week, and that was the first time I did that. And this week has just been amazing for me. I was just like, wow, I just really needed that. And so, yeah, those Epsom salt baths. And the thing is, it's like really just helping the detox pathways, right? Because we're just so overloaded with so much toxins constantly. And a lot of times it's just they're not going to the bathroom. They're not eliminating. They're just holding all those toxins in. And it can be as simple as getting the child to be able to use the bathroom, to get that child to feel better. So it doesn't have to be hard. And I know my first book I wrote was called Learning How to Breathe, because it is so overwhelming. There is so much out there that so many parents get really confused and they get overwhelmed. And then they can't even handle their own stress. How are they going to be able to help their child stress, especially within last year, right? A lot of parents are, I guess, homeschooling, right? A lot of parents are homeschooling and along with their own, the work that they're doing. So taking the time as a parent, I don't know if you teach this as well, to help parents de-stress. But everything that you're teaching as, for the children, for the parents, and especially moms that are helping out and dads, to take the time for themselves to do the Epsom salt baths. Because I forgot how wonderful it is until it hit me this week where I needed that. And it just made a huge difference.
Have you ever tried magnesium?
Oh,
Magnesium.
yeah.
So
Yes.
the AKA Dead Sea salt. There are so many amazing things to put in a bath for a child that is super safe and really helpful. So, and especially right before bed, because magnesium before sleep, and the right kind, helps to create the right kinds of sleep patterns and the right kinds of sleep for a child so that they can heal and so that they can detox their brains. And it's the small changes. We don't want to change too much or go too much out of our way. I found it to be really helpful when families do this together. Even though this is for children, the whole family ends up feeling great.
I do encourage the whole family to jump on board because if you're saying, gluten and dairy free for the child and then the mom's over there eating pizza, that's not going to be good, right? So I do say like it's good for the whole family to do it, especially at the beginning. And it's hard at the beginning, especially if you're not used to eating gluten and dairy free. You're like, this is a whole nother world. I don't know what to do. But then you kind of get into it and you're like, this is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And then once your brain feels better, and that's my biggest thing is my brain. When I stay away from gluten, my brain is just so much better and clear. Well, have you noticed any brain stuff? I mean, I know you work with a lot of talking about gut health, but what about brain health? Have you noticed in the last year or two with children's brains and how they're functioning?
So something that really is very surprisingly, it's surprising to see how big of a difference behavior is when it comes to sugar in the diet and eliminating sugar. So what I do is allow for real honey and fruit in the protocols, but no other sugar. So all your moms who are like thinking right now, but what about coconut sugar? What about all of them? Whatever you're thinking, it's all
Agave. I got the,
no,
yeah.
all has to go. Everything but real, pure, non-pasteurized raw honey that's local and fruit. And what happens in the beginning is everyone loses their mind because sugar is so addictive. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a really hard week or two. And then what I found to be really interesting is that most kids, after a month, they're not craving it. Adults do, but the addiction is gone and they feel so great that most kids don't ask for it anymore. They just don't care. And that's something that I found to be really interesting with brain. And also I started thinking about more and more about blue light and how it affects sleep and melatonin production, and which is a master hormone. And since we're all virtual now and on screens, and it's a big difference, especially for our children, between how much screens before like things closed and then the whole entire digital world opened up a lot more, even for the younger ones. um Having some space between being in front of a screen and sleep makes a huge difference in the quality of sleep and for cellular repair and resiliency. And this is just kind of emerging science, but I feel like we'll be seeing a lot more of this information in the next few years and how it affects brain function.
Yeah, I know that's one thing I've noticed increase is anxiety, depression, stuff like that. That's kind of really affecting more that a little bit of the older kids. But when I even say older kids, I'm talking probably second or third grade is when we're starting to kind of notice it up to, teenage years and just a really big rise on that. And like you said earlier, just the magnesium can kind of help calm that brain down if they are having some anxiety. That's a good suggestion to put. Are you getting the magnesium salts to put in the bathtub? Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about like the powder internally?
We usually do baths. So
Hmm.
I'm not a huge fan of supplements, I have to say. Like, there's no supplement that could really, in my opinion, there's no supplement that's going to be a magic bullet.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
might help a little bit, but the magic bullet is giving your child's body what it needs to heal so that it can heal itself. So the building blocks for a healthy child, that's real food, fruits, vegetables, um, stocks, broths, fermented foods is the big one, you
Now,
know.
what do you do for kids that are really picky? Because I
Oh,
know you have those kids, right? I'm not the only one down here in North Carolina that has the picky kids. So what do you suggest for parents that when they're just like, oh, they just eat gummies. That's the only thing they'll eat, or, and they're just so picky about their foods. Any
yeah,
suggestions?
yeah, I have a few tips. So, so first of all, it's completely normal for a kid to be picky. Taste buds change depending on what they're used to. When a child has a lot of sugar in their diet, taste buds change to accommodate that, and something that's not very sweet might not be very palatable for a while. You have to just remove it for a while for it to kind of adjust. But let's say, so something that I love doing is encouraging juicing the real kind of juicing that you do at home, especially of greens and veggies. And a lot of kids are very much not going to drink green celery juice with spinach and chard, and no, even adults won't.
Right.
So, so what we usually do is add some fruit to it. Maybe start with like half tasty things, like fruit. Apple is super sweet, for example. Half not so tasty. Those are the veggies, ingredients, and herbs, and then diluting it with water. And
Okay.
every single day you do that, you add more and more of the juice and less water. So it's a gradual process, and you'd be surprised at how many kids really very quickly adapt to the taste. Within a few weeks, you might have you and your child drinking all pure green juice with some ginger in it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just, a bit more whatever they're used to. I actually got that idea from a problem that I was having when I was working in the hospitals. I've been getting a lot of kids who were severely iron deficient. They needed blood transfusions. Why were they so iron deficient at age 2, 3? Because all they did was want to drink milk. Milk in the morning, milk in the afternoon, milk at night. And how do you get a 2-year-old? We can't really bribe a 2-year-old. They don't want it. They don't want it to eat food and not drink milk. They're used to what they're used to, and that's it. So what we would do is start diluting the milk with water. And they're
Okay.
not getting the exact calories that they were getting before, which stimulates them to want to eat. And we want them to eat foods with iron. And so within a month, they're on a regular diet and not drinking milk so much. One, because it's not as tasty anymore. It's just purely diluted with water. And two, because their body feels better when they start getting the iron from the foods. And I got that idea from how I got my kid off a binky, which is awful. But I think it's fine because it worked. I actually took her pacifier and I made the hole really big so it wouldn't suction, and it just became undesirable.
Right. There you go. You have to work it.
She dropped it in like 2 days because the sucking action, it just wouldn't work. It was like a dead binky.
Well, you have to be creative as parents, but like, I don't know what happened. That's just kind of what happened. So that's a great suggestion.
I follow some people that are super great with like picky eaters. That's their specialty. And some great advice that I've been recommending lately was to have a child just try one bite. Just try one bite per day. And, it helps to see you eating whatever it is you want them to try as well. And all they have to do is try one bite. They could spit it out if they want. But there are many studies that point to the fact that a child needs to try something up to 7 times in order for them to understand what they're trying and to accept it. And so that just trying it one time, it really does help a lot. I have a lot of kids who have a lot of fermented foods as their prescription to restore the microbiome. And fermented foods are a special kind of taste that's really not loved. I mean, sauerkraut, beet kvass, fermented carrots, some of it is tasty and some of it is just not something that they've ever tried before. And for those things, you could actually hide them in foods. Like if you want to add sauerkraut, you could just do the juice, which is super potent, and put it in anything that is not too hot, like on a baked potato or on broccoli. And all you need is just a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. You only need like a teaspoon or a tablespoon for adult, I don't know exactly what you recommend, but
for adults, it would be like a quarter cup of ferments a day would be amazing. But since most adults are having 0, you could anything but 0 would be great.
Right.
A variety would be great. I feel like it's the most magical cure of so many problems that can range from things like bloating and upset stomach and reflux, which so many adults suffer from, and kids. And it's how potent it is like if you buy a really great probiotic, and they do have their time and place, and they might be very useful at times. They're usually measured, a potency of a probiotic and the associated cost is measured by colony forming units. And so like one serving would probably be something in the billions of colony forming units of how potent it is. But a tablespoon of a ferment of sauerkraut of cabbage is about 1.5 trillion colony forming units. So we're comparing billions to trillions. So on one hand, it's very powerful. You don't want to give it too much too fast. You want to start slow, like a teaspoon a day, and you build up from there. And so if you're thinking about a teaspoon a day or even a tablespoon a day, you could totally hide that into food.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we do that pretty regularly. When do you start adding that into, this one thing I learned in the last 4 or 5 years, but as a baby, you're talking about like age 2 kind of starting, or even age 1. When do you start adding the fermented foods?
So it depends on how severe the situation is. So when families come to me, there's usually some kind of problem, like eczema, or even in babies. And I'm seeing this more and more and more. Babies that can't tolerate any foods. They're, maybe they're breastfed, but mom can't have any foods, and they're having severe eczema. And the only way to treat that is to put steroid creams on it to decrease the inflammation topically and locally. So those kids, or we start earlier because we want to restore the microbiome. So I would say like around 1 year, it's safe to start fermented foods really slowly, very carefully, very mindfully, because we want to make sure that what you're using is the real deal. There are a lot of fermented foods that are not what you need, so you have to really know where to look for it. It's not easy to find. If you want to make it yourself, that's great. You don't have to make it yourself. You could get it from a great source. You just have to know what to look for. Making sure there's no vinegar in it, that it's not pasteurized or heated, that it's raw, that it's really alive.
Right, the live good stuff. So the microbiome, my uncle, he's growing some cannabis plants, and he says it's all about the microbiome on how he grows these plants. And when I hear him, because he's an herbalist, and he grows herbs and plants, and he all talks about if the microbiome is not right in the soil, then the plants are going to grow right. But hello, we're human beings. It's the same thing, right? So getting that microbiome that you're talking about internally so we can grow healthy, it totally makes sense that we're not that we're a plant, but we're a living thing that needs that microbiome. Do you do any testing to see like what the microbiome shows to help, to help your patients, or you just you're just in tune and?
So yes, testing can be done, but I truly only recommend doing testing if you've done all the changes you need to do with diet. And if it's still a problem, then you could do testing, so you could tweak the little small things, like to check for a yeast overgrowth, or to see what kind of organisms are populating your child's body. Testing is super easy to do. It's not invasive, meaning it's not a blood test. You could send urine or stool, easy. But there's really no point in doing this testing unless you've done some healing. And that's usually the first month or 2. Like clean up the diet, detox the lifestyle, add tons of stocks and broths and ferments, and then do the testing, because there's so many changes that are going to happen that the results that you'll get before you do any dietary changes, it's gonna be useless.
Well, I like what you're saying. You're a little bit different thinking, starting with that before doing testing. Because I know a lot of doctors, even functional medicine doctors, it's expensive to do testing too, right? And especially a lot of these clients and patients have to pay cash. And so if they have to pay for a blood test or a stool test, I mean, that could be thousands of dollars sometimes, this really nice testing. And then they get the education. But I really am enjoying listening to you saying start at the foundation. And then if we have an issue 3 or 4 weeks down the road, then we can always add the testing. That's something I haven't really heard from talking to multiple doctors.
There's so much science and testing and data.
Yes.
Right now more advanced than we know as practitioners and in science, as scientists, know what to do with. And so you might do a bunch of testing, and half the information we don't know what to do with as practitioners, really, because
right.
It's changing. It doesn't mean anything. You can look for things, you'll always find something. So what's the point of digging and digging and digging if you haven't done the foundational steps that are needed to make sure that there's some kind of good bacteria in the gut? Do that
Wow.
first. It costs nothing.
Right.
It really doesn't. How much does a head of cabbage cost?
Yeah, I got one in my refrigerator.
So
They were on sale for March 17th, right? Like, I think my husband came home with 4 and he's like, honey, they were like so cheap. And I was like, okay. But yeah, they're not expensive at all, right? Yeah. And that's a good place to start.
you can get a whole month, no, more, probably 2 months because it's a little kid, right? 2 months of the most potent probiotic that you know is alive, that you know has 20 times more vitamin C bioavailable than a regular, cabbage if you ferment it, that will help you digest everything else as a digestive aid. For one head of cabbage and a tablespoon of salt for 2 months, this will be the most potent probiotic for your child.
Wow. That's so awesome. That's so valuable, what you just said.
Yeah. I even made a slogan: a fermented day keeps the doctor away.
Exactly.
Pass that forward.
That's awesome. I love hearing this. This is something that like you said, even when you were trying to help your daughter, you couldn't get this information. And there's some of the stuff out there, right? But it's hard to put it together and to know that a pediatrician like yourself that's had the education is saying what? Go back to the fermentation. It's like, it's just awesome. You mean we don't need an antibiotic every day to survive, and it's just so grateful to hear that going back to the roots because it's so true. But yet we still, as many blogs, as many doctors are still saying this, they still are not getting the message. It's so frustrating, right? That's all we could do. But I'm going to try to do my best to send this podcast to everyone that I know. And I want them to find you on your website. So what's your website? Because it's a gorgeous website.
Thank you. It's blossompediatrics.com. And there you will find some blogs, ways to connect with me. I offer 15-minute discovery calls to see if working together is a right fit for you and your family. I have practice in New York and New Jersey. That's a private practice in holistic pediatrics. And what I've been working on is bringing this to a wider audience, so you could be anywhere and work with me through a 30-day program called Rescue Your Child's Health. And it's right now specific for kids who have eczema, asthma, and allergies. And it takes the same protocol that I've been taking my private patients through for the first month to restore their health, to detox their child, to give your child the building blocks that are needed in an evidence-based, scientific, easy to do approach that does not stress out the family.
Do they get any live sessions with you?
So there's an option for that, but it's really not necessary. We do Q&As once a week. It's live. So we get together as a group and we go through all the material that has been pre-recorded and sent out. And we go through the material, and then you get all the questions answered. So you're not alone. We're able to give each other support. And as a mom, I'm doing it with you. And so as a mom, I have to say, it's not super simple, but it really does help tremendously to have community of people that are doing it with you. And I've been doing this program, and I've done rounds of it, and I feel so connected to everybody in these group programs with me. And it's so amazing to see how much improvement everyone's been experiencing. And the most common thing I hear these days is like, my kid wouldn't eat anything, and now they're like drinking green juice and having sauerkraut all the time, and everyone's kind of better, and the whole family is feeling better too. So
I love hearing that. That is so awesome. I know you got to be so proud of everything you accomplished, and from where you were and where you're at now, and seeing thousands of children. When you see the children, that's what makes my day, right? And I'm sure it makes you day. When you have a child with asthma and they don't need their inhaler anymore, and they give you a hug and you're like, yes,
Yeah.
this is what I'm doing, and
Yeah.
it's a true blessing. So I appreciate you sharing, and you gave a lot of great information that I know people listen to are going to get like, all right, where's the Epsom salt and where's the cabbage? And I hope that they will find your website and get the information that they need to continue to live a healthier life for their family. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. This was such a treat. I loved speaking with you about the things I love most.
Thanks for listening to the No More Meds podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share your favorite episodes with your family and friends, or at least leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher. The content and opinions expressed are those of the host and presenters. They are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. Product statements have not been evaluated by the FDA.